Welcome to Books and More, the place where powerful ideas and life-changing stories come to life. Today, we dive into Rich Dad's Before You Quit Your Job, the 10th book in the renowned Rich Dad series by Robert Kiyosaki. This book is a guide for anyone dreaming of financial freedom and considering the leap from employee to entrepreneur. Packed with real-world lessons, mindset shifts, and the hard truths every aspiring business owner must face, it reveals what school never taught us about money, risk, and success. Join us as we explore the wisdom that can transform your financial future. The introduction begins with one of the most frightening moments of my life, the day I officially left my stable job and became an entrepreneur. It was the moment I realized I would no longer have a steady paycheck, no insurance, no retirement plan, no paid days off. Everything I once took for granted disappeared overnight. My income dropped to zero while expenses rose quickly. Office costs, phone bills, vehicles, lawyers, accountants, insurance, supplies, even coffee for the team. I finally understood that my boss had been paying far more on my behalf than the salary I saw each month. And that's also when I understood why so few people dare to leave their jobs to start a business. Because they're afraid. Afraid of having no money, no stable income, and not being able to support their family. But the truth is, being an entrepreneur isn't about having money. It's about being able to operate even when you don't. I recount my early, staggering steps into entrepreneurship, full of confusion, missteps, and moments when failure seemed certain. When I left Xerox in 1978, I didn't just face financial fear. I faced real life and death risks. During turbulent flights and failed customer meetings, I questioned whether I was truly meant to be a business owner. But Rich Dad had always told me, people are not born to be employees or employers. People are trained to become what they choose. The problem is that school only trains employees. It teaches us to seek security, while entrepreneurship is a journey toward freedom. These two paths oppose each other completely. The more you cling to security, the further you move away from freedom. I explain that employees are products of the industrial age, trained to follow orders rather than create opportunities. Meanwhile, the greatest entrepreneurs rarely follow traditional education. Edison, Ford, Gates, Jobs, they were people the school system could never contain. I learned that to become an entrepreneur, I had to transform, like a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. It wasn't a change of job, it was a change of mindset, from seeking safety to seeking freedom, from relying on wages to creating value, from following rules to making new ones. In the introduction, I also explain why this book is different from most business books. Most are written by professors or journalists, people who have never lived in the trenches of entrepreneurship. They describe entrepreneurs as born geniuses, rarely mentioning the failures, the fear, and the brutal lessons. But failure is where entrepreneurs learn the most. I felt crushed by the game, betrayed by partners, rejected by the market, cornered financially. And in those moments, I learned lessons no school could teach, the ability to rise again. I conclude that the biggest difference between employees and entrepreneurs lies in what they seek: security or freedom. Employees are driven by fear of losing their job, fear of being broke, fear of failure. Entrepreneurs are driven by courage. Courage doesn't mean the absence of fear, it means moving forward despite it. And the truest answer to this path lies not in the mind, but in the heart. This book is written to help you find that answer within yourself. Chapter 1: A successful company is formed before it comes into existence. Chapter 1 begins with a truth most employees never realize. A truly successful company is born long before it has an office, staff, or even a product. It starts in the mind of the founder, in their vision, preparation, and courage. When I was younger, I believed business success came from money, ideas, or hard work. But Rich Dad taught me that the real foundation is invisible. Most businesses fail not because they lack talent or effort, but because the founder enters the game without first becoming the kind of person capable of leading a business. I describe the shock I felt the moment I left my job to become an entrepreneur. The day before, I had a paycheck, benefits, and a sense of stability. 24 hours later, everything disappeared. I was no longer the one receiving a salary. I was the one responsible for paying salaries. My income dropped to zero and expenses rose overnight. That's when I learned the first real lesson of entrepreneurship: fear. Fear of not having money, of not having stability, of failing my family. And this chapter makes it clear that this fear is exactly what stops most people from ever becoming entrepreneurs. Rich Dad often told me, you must build the business inside of you before you build it outside. Schools teach us to become employees, to avoid mistakes, and to seek safety. But to be an entrepreneur, you must do the opposite. Embrace uncertainty, learn from failure, and trust your ability to adapt. This is why many people quit their jobs to start a business, only to return to employment soon after. They bring an employee mindset into the world of entrepreneurship, and that mindset simply cannot survive there. In this chapter, I share the painful lessons from my early ventures. I had a business that grew quickly and then collapsed just as fast because its foundations were weak. I called it the danger of early success. Success that comes before you've developed the skills to manage it. Rich Dad always emphasized that the small details determine a company's destiny. If you ignore them, even a promising business can fall apart. I also stress the difference between working hard and building a system. Employees are paid for their time and effort. Entrepreneurs earn by creating systems that work even when they aren't present. Many small business owners end up exhausted because they're working in the business instead of working on it. They rely on their own labor instead of building structures that can function without them. This trap keeps them from ever becoming true business owners. Chapter 1 ultimately serves as preparation. It encourages readers to step onto the entrepreneurial path with open eyes. A business does not begin with a loan, a product, or a logo. It begins with the transformation of the person. If you want to quit your job, you must first prepare yourself to handle fear, learn from failures, build a vision, and design a system before you ever open your doors. A successful company is formed in the mind long before it appears in the world. It is built on clarity, courage, and the willingness to grow. And that invisible groundwork becomes the strongest foundation an entrepreneur can have. Chapter 2. The dumber you are, the richer you become. Chapter 2 opens with a lesson I learned at 9 years old, one of the most important lessons in my entire entrepreneurial journey. At that age, I launched my first small venture and failed almost immediately. Yet, only a few weeks later, with the same limited knowledge and the same youthful enthusiasm, I succeeded. What changed wasn't my age or intelligence, it was my perspective on failure. I realized that every mistake in the first attempt became a stepping stone for the second. From that moment, I understood a principle that would shape my whole life. Failure isn't the opposite of success, it is part of success. Rich Dad taught me that most people remain financially stuck not because they aren't smart, but because they avoid failure at all costs. They spend their entire lives trying to look intelligent, trying not to make mistakes, and trying to stay safe. Schools teach us that mistakes are bad, that failure should be punished. But the world of business teaches the exact opposite. Those who learn fastest from failure rise to the top. Those who fear failure remain employees forever. In entrepreneurship, the willingness to be dumb, to not know, to try anyway, to stumble, to learn, is an advantage, not a weakness. I explain that many small businesses fail not because of a lack of money or ideas, but because the founders don't learn from their mistakes. When something goes wrong, they blame circumstances, partners, or the economy instead of examining their own decisions. In doing so, they miss the greatest opportunity failure offers: insight. Every failing system reveals what needs to be fixed. Every obstacle points to a skill that must be learned. But if a person refuses to see failure as feedback, they simply repeat the same mistakes until the business collapses. Throughout the chapter, I describe moments when failure forced me to confront who I really was. Failure exposes pride, insecurity, and fear. It makes you face parts of yourself that you'd rather ignore. When my early businesses struggled, I had to confront the fact that I didn't know enough, wasn't disciplined enough, and sometimes wasn't courageous enough. But that confrontation was exactly what I needed to grow. Rich Dad always said, an entrepreneur's strength is built in the same place as their weakness. The skill you lack most often becomes the skill that defines your future success, if you're willing to learn it. I also discuss why academically gifted people often struggle in business. School rewards correctness, compliance, and consistency. Business rewards experimentation, adaptability, and resilience. Straight A students fear being wrong. Entrepreneurs must be wrong over and over again. In school, failing a test hurts your grade. In business, failing a test teaches you how to succeed. These two systems operate on opposite rules, which is why intelligence alone doesn't create wealth. What creates wealth is the ability to learn quickly from mistakes. By the end of the chapter, I emphasize that wealthy people are not necessarily the smartest. They are the most willing to act despite not knowing everything. They are the ones who try, fail, learn, and try again. The more they fail, the more they grow. And the more they grow, the richer they become. The people who fear failure act the least. Those who act the least achieve the least. Chapter 2 delivers one message clearly and powerfully. Failure is not your enemy, it is your greatest teacher. If you want to become an entrepreneur, you must be willing to be dumb, to step into the unknown, to make mistakes, and to turn every setback into experience. Because in the world of business, those who dare to fail are the ones who ultimately succeed. Chapter 3: Understanding the difference between a profession and a job. Chapter 3 begins with a lesson Rich Dad repeated to me countless times. Most people spend their entire lives mastering a profession, but never truly understand the job they are meant to do. This misunderstanding is one of the main reasons aspiring entrepreneurs struggle when they leave the world of employment. Employees define themselves by their profession: teacher, engineer, technician, accountant, while entrepreneurs define themselves by the value they create and the problems they solve. Rich Dad taught me early on that your profession is only one tool in your toolbox. Your real job as an entrepreneur is far bigger. I explained that when I was young, I also believed my profession defined me. I thought success meant having a stable career and being good at a specific skill. But Rich Dad asked me one question that changed my perspective. What is your profession and what is your real job? I couldn't answer. He explained that a profession may make you an expert, but your real job is what determines your financial freedom. A person can be a brilliant engineer, but if they don't know how to sell, how to manage money, how to lead a team, or how to build a system, they still don't have the skills required to run a business. Their profession gives them knowledge, their real job gives them results. In this chapter, I recall meeting many talented specialists who failed in business because they confused being good at their profession with being ready to be an entrepreneur. One engineer once brought me his product idea, convinced that its technical excellence would guarantee success. But when I asked him about his marketing plan, cash flow, customer acquisition, and legal structure, he had no answers. He thought building a great product was enough. But in business, the product is only a small part of the equation. The real job of an entrepreneur is to build the entire system around the product: sales, distribution, finance, people, and structure. I emphasize that many new entrepreneurs fall into the trap of becoming self-employed instead of becoming true business owners. They leave their jobs only to create another job for themselves, one with longer hours, more stress, and less security. This happens when they rely only on their profession. They end up doing everything alone because they don't understand that their real job is not to do the work, but to design the system that does the work. They work harder, but not smarter, and eventually burn out. Rich Dad taught me that an entrepreneur's real job involves learning a wide range of skills: communication, sales, leadership, financial literacy, negotiation, team building, and problem solving. None of these are taught in traditional schools, which is why so many professionals struggle when they try to start a business. School trains people to specialize. Entrepreneurship requires people to generalize. To succeed, you must grow beyond your profession and take responsibility for areas you don't yet understand. Toward the end of the chapter, I remind readers that the moment you decide to stop identifying yourself by your profession is the moment you start seeing the world through the eyes of an entrepreneur. Your profession may help you earn a living, but your real job determines your freedom. Rich Dad would often say, your profession belongs to the world of employees. Your job belongs to the world of business owners. When you understand this difference, you finally begin the transformation from employee to entrepreneur. Chapter 3, therefore, is a call to shift identity and expand capability. It urges you to stop clinging to the comfort of your profession and start embracing the broader responsibilities of the entrepreneurial journey, because true success comes not from what you do, but from who you become. Chapter 4. Success reflects your failures. Chapter 4 opens with a truth Rich Dad taught me early in life. Your success is built directly on top of your failures. In fact, your greatest strengths are often born from the weaknesses you are forced to confront. As a young man, I didn't fully grasp this. But when my nylon wallet business skyrocketed and then collapsed just as quickly, the lesson finally sank in. Success didn't make me stronger. Failure did. In this chapter, I walk the reader through 3 major schools that shaped me: my time at Xerox, learning how to sell; my early years as an entrepreneur, learning how to survive; and the rebuilding years when I learned how to grow again. Xerox for me wasn't a job, it was a training ground. It taught me confidence, discipline, and how to handle rejection. But leaving Xerox stripped away my safety net. Without a paycheck or benefits, I faced the raw reality of entrepreneurship. If you fail, you pay for it yourself. It was a harsh but necessary shift that forced me to toughen up emotionally and financially. I share how my partners and I worked for almost 2 years without pay just to keep our young company alive. Those were the years when my financial education became real. I had to learn cash flow management, cost control, negotiation, and resilience. These experiences were not glamorous, they were humbling. Yet, they were the very lessons that laid the foundation for everything I achieved later. A core message of this chapter is that failure exposes the parts of you that need to grow. The nylon wallet company revealed a painful truth. My product was strong, but my systems were weak. I lacked the management structure, legal protection, financial planning, and operational discipline required for long-term success. Rich Dad's BI triangle later helped me understand that if even one side of the triangle is weak, the entire business will eventually collapse. Failure forced me to strengthen every part of that structure. I also challenged the common belief that successful people never fail. In reality, successful people fail more than others because they are willing to try more, risk more, and learn more. Employees are trained to avoid mistakes. Entrepreneurs are trained by failure itself to embrace them. That's why people who excel academically sometimes struggle in the real world. They're conditioned to fear being wrong. But business rewards those who recover quickly, learn deeply, and adapt constantly. Throughout the chapter, I reflect on the emotional side of failure. It hurts your pride. It damages your ego. It makes you doubt your abilities. But those emotions are part of the entrepreneurial journey. Rich Dad often reminded me, failure is the process that prepares you for success. Without the breakdown, you never develop the character required for the breakthrough. By the end of chapter 4, the message is clear. Success is not a reward for avoiding failure. It's the result of mastering it. Every mistake reveals a skill you need to learn. every setback reveals a weakness you need to strengthen. And every painful moment carries within it the seeds of future success. When you understand this, you stop fearing failure and start using it as your greatest tool. In business, your success is simply the reflection of all the failures you've had the courage to overcome. Chapter 5. The process is more important than the goal. Chapter 5 begins with a reminder from Rich Dad that lasting success does not come from the goals you set, but from the process you go through to reach them. Employees often think in terms of what they want to achieve, while entrepreneurs think in terms of who they must become to achieve it. The process is where skills are built, character is forged, and the mindset of a true entrepreneur takes shape. I share that when I was younger, I obsessed over financial goals, numbers I wanted to reach, deals I wanted to close, income levels I wanted to hit. But every time I failed to reach those goals, I felt defeated. Rich Dad challenged me by asking, are you chasing money or are you learning how to create money? That question changed everything. He taught me that money is merely a result. The real value lies in learning the process of becoming someone capable of creating wealth. In this chapter, I recount my experience building my first company. While producing and selling the nylon wallets seemed like the main objective, the true value came from the process behind it. Learning product design, supply chain management, marketing, negotiation, and teamwork. These skills became the building blocks for every future venture I started. Goals come and go, but the skills gained from the process stay with you for life. A key message in Chapter 5 is that the early stages of entrepreneurship are always the most challenging, because that is when the process teaches its hardest lessons. Many people quit too soon, not because their dream is too big, but because the process feels too long. They expect immediate results and mistake slow progress for failure. Rich Dad reminded me repeatedly that the early years of any business are the training years. Just like athletes, musicians, or surgeons, entrepreneurs must endure long periods of practice before they see visible success. I explained that the process is often uncomfortable. It pushes you into areas where you're inexperienced, uncertain, and vulnerable. You face setbacks, financial pressure, self-doubt, and criticism. But each challenge serves a purpose. It strips away limiting beliefs and replaces them with real capability. The process teaches discipline, resilience, patience, and strategic thinking. These are qualities no goal can give you instantly. They must be earned step by step. As I describe the tough times, working long hours, facing bankruptcy, negotiating with creditors, starting over after failures, I highlight how each struggle strengthened me. Without those hardships, I wouldn't have developed the mindset needed to build the Rich Dad company or create cash flow. The process, not the outcome, shaped the entrepreneur I eventually became. Another theme in the chapter is the importance of investing in yourself. Even during difficult moments, I continued learning, reading, taking classes, seeking mentors, and practicing new skills. Rich Dad always said, when you grow, your business grows. When you stop growing, your business stops. The process of continual self-improvement is what separates true entrepreneurs from those who merely dream of success. In the closing part of Chapter 5, I emphasize that goals are useful for direction, but the process is what transforms you. If you focus only on the destination, you miss the lessons that make the journey worthwhile. But if you embrace the process, its challenges, its uncertainty, and its constant demand for growth, you build the foundation for lasting success. Chapter 5 ends with a truth every entrepreneur must understand. Wealth doesn't come from what you achieve, but from who you become through the process of achieving it. Chapter 6. The 3 Kinds of Money. Chapter 6 opens with a conversation between Rich Dad and me about my time in the Marine Corps. I told him I had learned discipline, leadership, and the meaning of mission. He nodded and said, "Good, because business is also a mission." From that moment, he introduced a concept that fundamentally reshaped the way I see entrepreneurship. There are 3 kinds of money people work for. And unless you understand all 3, you'll struggle to build a strong, sustainable business. First, I clarify the difference between three types of income and three types of money. Income, earned, portfolio, and passive, is something the tax department categorizes. But the three kinds of money Rich Dad spoke of aren't financial categories. They are motivational forces. They reflect why people work, how they behave, and what drives their decisions in business. Understanding these three forces helps you become a smarter leader and a more intentional entrepreneur. The first kind is competitive money. This is the money most people chase. From childhood, we are taught to compete for grades, trophies, promotions, and recognition. As adults, people compete for higher salaries, better positions, and job security. Businesses compete for customers and market share. Competitive money is rooted in scarcity. It assumes there isn't enough for everyone. Although competition can make people sharper, it also breeds anxiety and burnout. It keeps individuals stuck in the mindset of beating others rather than creating something greater. The second kind is cooperative money, and this is where true entrepreneurial growth begins. Cooperative money is created when people come together, combine strengths, and build something bigger than any one person can do alone. Rich Dad told me that the most powerful companies in the world thrive on cooperation. Teams of talented people aligned around a shared purpose. When I helped build the Rich Dad company, it wasn't my skills alone that made it succeed. It was the synergy of an entire group, writers, designers, partners, and supporters, working toward a single mission. Cooperative money multiplies opportunities rather than dividing them. The third kind is spiritual money, and Rich Dad believed it was the most powerful of all. Spiritual money comes from purpose, mission, and a deep desire to create positive impact. It's the kind of energy that inspires loyalty, motivates people through difficult times, and attracts others who believe in the same vision. When we launched Cash Flow and the Rich Dad books, we didn't do it for profit. We did it to bring financial education to the world. That mission gave us the strength to push through long hours, early failures, and overwhelming demand. Ironically, because we chased mission instead of money, the money eventually followed, and far more abundantly than expected. A central message of this chapter is that a great business blends all three kinds of money. Competitive money keeps you sharp. Cooperative money expands your reach. Spiritual money gives your company soul and longevity. When these three forces work together, they create momentum no competitor can easily break. Toward the end of the chapter, I speak directly to those considering quitting their jobs. If you only know competitive money, you may be caught in constant comparison and stress. If you don't learn to cooperate, you'll be limited by your own abilities. And without spiritual money, your business will lack the deeper purpose needed to overcome adversity. Entrepreneurship is challenging, and mission, not money, is what keeps you going when everything else gets tough. Chapter 6 ultimately teaches that wealth is not created by money alone, but by the energy behind it. When you understand the three kinds of money and learn to harness them wisely, you don't just build a successful business, you build a meaningful one. Chapter 7. The size of the mission determines the product. Chapter 7 opens with one of Rich Dad's most profound lessons. A company can never grow larger than the mission behind it. Most people focus on creating a product first, believing that success comes from features, design, or pricing. But Rich Dad taught me that a product is only as strong as the mission that gives birth to it. A small mission creates a small business. A powerful mission has the potential to build a global organization. I explained that when I was younger, I obsessed over building good products. I believed that if a product was great, customers would inevitably come. But Rich Dad challenged that idea. He said, before you build a product, decide who you want to serve and why. A mission defines direction, inspires action, and shapes every decision a company makes. Without mission, even the best ideas lack purpose. In this chapter, I describe how the Rich Dad Company began not with a product, but with a mission: to elevate the financial well-being of millions of people through education. The board game Cash Flow, the seminars, and eventually the Rich Dad series of books were simply expressions of that mission. They were born because the mission demanded tools capable of teaching financial literacy in an engaging and accessible way. The mission came first, the products came later. I also explore how companies that chase money instead of mission eventually lose their way. When profit becomes the goal, decision-making becomes short-sighted. Businesses cut corners, compromise quality, abandon innovation, and gradually weaken their foundations. But when mission stays at the center, a company remains focused, resilient, and purpose-driven, even when things get tough. Mission attracts loyal customers, passionate employees, and strong partners. It creates a magnetic force that money alone cannot produce. Another key theme in Chapter 7 is the relationship between mission and the BI triangle. A large mission demands strong systems, legal structures, leadership, communication, and financial intelligence. If a mission is big but the internal structure is weak, the company will ultimately collapse under its own ambition. This is why many would-be entrepreneurs fail. They dream big but build small. Rich Dad taught me that if your mission is to serve millions, then your systems must be designed to support millions. I also share real examples of entrepreneurs who approached me with product ideas but no clear mission. When I asked who they wanted to help, what problem they were solving, or why they believed their product mattered, most had no answer. Without mission, their ideas lacked life. A product without mission is disposable. A product powered by mission becomes meaningful. Toward the end of the chapter, I revisit the moment when the Rich Dad company started growing faster than we could handle. The demand for cash flow exploded, and the phone in Sharon's garage rang nonstop. It wasn't because the game was perfect. It wasn't. It was because the mission resonated deeply with people who wanted a different financial future. Mission was the engine that drove our momentum. Chapter 7 concludes with a reminder that entrepreneurs should not chase money or chase products. They should chase purpose. When the mission is clear and powerful, it naturally shapes the right product, attracts the right people, and leads to sustainable success. A mission is the heartbeat of a company, and when the heartbeat is strong, everything built around it becomes stronger. In the end, the size of your mission determines the size of your impact, and ultimately, the size of your success. Chapter 8. Building a company that can do what no other company can. Chapter 8 begins with a question I once asked Rich Dad. What is the most important job of a business leader? Instead of giving me one answer, he gave me 8. These 8 responsibilities form the core of what separates an ordinary business from a company capable of doing what no other company can achieve. This chapter reveals that leadership is not about status or authority. It is about building a structure strong enough to support a powerful mission. The first responsibility of a leader is to define the mission, vision, and values of the company. Without a clear mission, a business becomes reactive, easily swayed by trends, competitors, and short-term pressures. A strong mission acts like a compass, guiding every decision and aligning everyone toward a common purpose. Rich Dad always said, a company cannot become something great if its leader does not know what great means. Next, a leader must bring in the right people. Entrepreneurs often try to do everything themselves, believing that no one else can do the job as well. I made that mistake many times. But a real leader understands that the company's strength comes not from personal talent, but from the combined talents of a strong team. To build something extraordinary, you must surround yourself with people who are smarter, more skilled, and more experienced in areas you are not. The third responsibility is strengthening the company's internal operations, its culture, systems, and communication. Many businesses fail not because their product is weak, but because their internal structure is chaotic. Rich Dad taught me that a company must run like a well-trained military unit. Clear roles, solid systems, disciplined execution, and a culture of trust. The fourth responsibility is expanding the company externally. This includes partnerships, market positioning, distribution networks, and strategic alliances. A leader must look beyond the walls of the office and create bridges that allow the company to grow. Without external expansion, even the best internal systems eventually stagnate. A leader must also ensure profitability. While mission drives a company's heart, profitability keeps it alive. Many entrepreneurs neglect this, confusing passion with financial discipline. But in business, passion without profit leads to bankruptcy. Leaders must know how to price effectively, manage cash flow, and make decisions that sustain long-term financial health. The sixth and seventh responsibilities involve investing in research and development and building or acquiring real assets, whether intellectual property, systems, brands, or technology. Innovation is the lifeblood of a company that wants to stay ahead. Assets are what protect the company's future. My wallet business collapsed partly because I failed to secure patents and lacked strong systems, an expensive but unforgettable lesson. Finally, a leader must serve the community. This responsibility surprised me when Rich Dad first mentioned it. But over time, I learned that companies respected by their communities gain loyal customers, supportive partners, and long-term goodwill. A business that contributes beyond itself becomes stronger from the inside out. In the latter part of the chapter, I describe how the Rich Dad Company emerged from a small garage with no employees and no promises. What fueled its rapid growth was our mission and the strength of the team we built around it. None of us needed a job or a paycheck. We were driven by a purpose greater than profit. That spiritual energy attracted opportunities we could never have planned for. Chapter 8 ends with a powerful reminder. Building a company is not about creating a product. It is about creating an organization. And great organizations are led by people who master these responsibilities. When a leader fulfills them, the company gains the ability to do what no other company can: change lives, shape the future, and endure challenges with unwavering strength. Chapter 9. Don't Compete on Price. Chapter 9 begins with one of the most counterintuitive lessons Rich Dad taught me. Never compete on price, compete on value. When I was young, this didn't make sense. Like many new entrepreneurs, I thought selling something cheap would attract more customers, and more customers would naturally mean more profit. But as I grew older and gained real experience, I discovered that competing on price is one of the fastest ways to weaken a company and destroy its identity. In this chapter, I share stories from the early days of cash flow and the Rich Dad books. Many people told me our products were too expensive. They insisted we needed cheaper versions to attract more buyers. But I remembered Rich Dad's words: cheap products attract cheap problems. Low prices attract customers who value cost over quality, customers who complain more, demand more, and stay loyal the least. High-value products, on the other hand, attract people who are committed, serious about learning, and willing to invest in themselves. It's not just different pricing, it's an entirely different business environment. I also explain why competing on price is a dangerous trap. When you lower your price, you're forced to lower your costs. Lower costs lead to weaker products. Weaker products lead to dissatisfied customers. Dissatisfied customers pressure you to lower the price even more. This downward spiral eventually crushes the company. Competing on price turns your business into a race to the bottom, a race no entrepreneur truly wants to win. Throughout the chapter, I describe encounters with entrepreneurs who proudly told me their competitive advantage was being cheaper than everyone else. When I asked what made their product unique or what mission they served, they had no real answer. They were building companies based on survival, not purpose. Rich Dad warned me that businesses without mission or differentiation can only compete on one thing: price. And price alone is a fragile foundation. I contrast this with companies that compete on value. When you focus on value, you invest in quality, innovation, customer experience, and long term relationships. You attract customers who appreciate excellence. These customers don't abandon you for someone cheaper. They stay because they believe in what you offer, and more importantly, they believe in why you offer it. Value based businesses become stronger over time, while price based businesses become exhausted. I also discuss the emotional side of pricing. Many entrepreneurs price their products low because they doubt themselves. They want acceptance, they fear rejection. But Rich Dad told me low prices often reflect low confidence. When you believe deeply in the value you deliver, you are no longer afraid to charge what it's worth. Pricing is not just a financial decision, it is a statement of self worth and belief in your mission. Toward the end of the chapter, I explain how price shapes your identity as an entrepreneur. If you choose the path of cheap, you will be forced into constant hustle, thin margins, and stressful competition. But if you choose the path of value, you build a brand, a loyal following, and a company that grows from strength to strength. Chapter 9 closes with a powerful reminder. You cannot change lives or build a great mission driven company by being the cheapest option. You build it by delivering real value, value so strong that people gladly invest in it. The entrepreneurs who succeed are not the ones who sell for less, but the ones who serve more. Chapter 10. Knowing when it's time to quit your job. Chapter 10 begins with a question almost everyone asks when dreaming of entrepreneurship. When is the right time to quit my job? Most people believe the answer lies in savings, timing, or having the perfect business idea. But Rich Dad taught me something completely different. You quit your job not when you have enough money, but when you have enough courage, skills, and emotional strength to survive without a paycheck. Leaving a job is not a financial decision, it is a personal transformation. I explained that most employees ask the wrong question. Instead of asking, how much money do I need before I quit? They should ask, how much can I handle when things go wrong? Because during the early months of entrepreneurship, money disappears faster than you expect. What keeps you alive is not your savings, it's your ability to sell, solve problems, communicate, lead, and endure setbacks. If you lack these skills, no amount of money will save you. I describe my experience leaving Xerox. The day before, I had a salary, benefits, and security. The day after, I had none of the above and a mountain of expenses. That was when I understood what Rich Dad meant about the emotional cost of entrepreneurship. When you quit your job, you enter a world where your success or failure depends entirely on you. There's no paycheck coming to rescue you, no boss to blame, and no safety net to hide behind. That reality forces you to grow up quickly. A major theme of this chapter is that you will never feel fully ready. If you wait for absolute certainty, you will wait for the rest of your life. Entrepreneurship always involves fear. Fear of losing money, fear of failing, fear of disappointing your family. Rich Dad said, if you feel fear but also feel excitement, go. That's the moment. The mixture of discomfort and desire is what signals true readiness. I also emphasize that before quitting, you must prepare yourself, not by building the business first, but by building the entrepreneur inside you. This means practicing essential skills while you still have the safety of a job: selling, managing cash flow, negotiating, taking small risks, and learning from failure. Employees are paid to avoid mistakes. Entrepreneurs are shaped by them. The transition requires a shift in identity from someone who seeks stability to someone who creates opportunity. Chapter 10 also warns against quitting too soon. Many people leave their jobs simply because they dislike their boss or feel trapped. They think entrepreneurship is an escape. But if you quit without building the emotional and practical foundation first, you are likely to end up back in another job feeling even more defeated. Entrepreneurship should never be an escape. It should be an evolution. Toward the end of the chapter, I explain that quitting your job is a commitment to a harder path, but a path with far greater freedom. You must accept that failures will come, money will get tight, and doubt will creep in. But you must also trust that each challenge will shape you into someone stronger, wiser, and more capable. Rich Dad told me, don't quit your job to chase money. Quit your job to chase the person you're meant to become. Chapter 10 closes with a powerful truth. You are ready to quit your job not when everything is perfect, but when you are prepared to grow through imperfection. You quit when your mission becomes stronger than your fear. And you quit when you understand that the journey of becoming an entrepreneur is not about leaving something behind, but about rising into who you truly are.